Hello, and welcome to Stumbling Forward, a podcast about real people and the failures, spiritual awakenings, life changes, and lessons learned that shape them into who they are today. Hello, and welcome to Stumbling Forward. I am Erica Taylor Beck, the founder of Authentic Foundations, and today I have the privilege of talking with the wonderful Malisa Hepner. Melissa, welcome, and would you like to tell us about yourself?
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm a therapist in Oklahoma. I have a podcast called Emotionally Unavailable, and I'm an author and breaking into the public speaking sitch. But mostly, I'm just trying to show people that there is hope, healing is possible, and I teach people how to build a life they're in love with.
I love that. So, you mentioned that you're a therapist in Oklahoma. What kind of therapist are you?
Man, I don't really even know myself a non-traditional therapist because I don't talk to my therapy clients any different than I talk to you or somebody on my show or my kids. I graduated with my master's in 2007 and did therapy as a student for a year and a half and then left it behind. I went into hospice social work because that's what my license is under. I'm a clinical social worker. But I did that for a really long time. I stayed away from therapy because I just felt like you couldn't be genuine, especially after I went through a really severe mental health crisis and kind of had to go through healing on my own. When I stepped into alignment and found authenticity, it's not like I thought I was being fake ever, but I lived in fear to speak my truth a lot. And when I got to a place where I wasn't feeling that fear and I felt very aligned, I was like, now I feel ready to go be a therapist, because it's not my social work credentials that make me an excellent therapist. It is the fact that I have gone through my own crisis and had to get out of it and have grown and evolved so much since then. And I feel really lucky too because I had a spiritual awakening during that healing journey, and I've just evolved and leveled up so much since then. And I just knew that I was gifted in this area, but I didn't realize how much I would receive from being a therapist. But I couldn't have done that if I was phoning it in the way I did as a student. And I mean, I have done therapeutic like things for years, but I remember being a hospice social worker. I met a lot of different kind of people, and I prided myself on the fact that I could be whoever that person wanted me to be. Whichever person, whether it's, an 85-year-old or a 22-year-old, whoever's sitting in front of me, I can be exactly what they want me to be. And now I just don't change at all according to who is sitting in front of me. It's me. And I feel like I finally came home to myself, but also am really comfortable in acknowledging this is my gift and I don't have to change. Like, the gift is in me and the authenticity. Long answer.
And
So I don't know. I'm just healing people. I don't know.
just out here doing some healing. No, I love that. And actually, you had a few things in there that I want to unpack. And having talked to you now several times, your personality is fantastic. And I very much enjoyed who you are as your authentic self. So I'm glad that you came into that. But you mentioned that you really found yourself as you were going through both a spiritual awakening and your own trauma and coming through healing. What was the tipping point for you, if you don't mind me asking, that spurred you to start to heal and really come to terms with who you are?
Well, this is really heavy, what I'm about to say. So I'm going to give you, a little sensitive content warning. Really did get to a place where I was ready to end my own life and had a plan for the first time ever. I had battled depression my entire existence, but I was serious this time, and I had the whole plan. And thankfully my kid's birthday was 2 weeks away, and I was like, that would be so rude. And then when I looked at the calendar, I was like, and then Thanksgiving, and then Christmas, like shit, and then the other kid's birthday, and the other kid's birthday. So I made a plan for, this was October, and I was like, okay, August, we're gonna do it in August. I wasn't thinking back to school or any of that. I was just like, August. And because I put it so far away, I was like, well, if we're gonna live for the next 10 months, we should probably try to figure out how to do that in a better way. And I quit my job and started the podcast. And then, honestly, I was still struggling up and down because I was relying on what little self-control and discipline I had to try to act better, but I wasn't able to better because I was lacking a couple of really important tools. And so then I had a podcast guest. I may have told you this when we've talked before, but they told me about the book, the Finding Peace Workbook. And when I understood my subconscious shame and I understood what my wounds were, I would know before I'm triggered. I didn't know what was triggered. So, like, how do I deal with this wounding if I don't even know what it hit, you know? And when I got to a
Mm-hmm.
place where I could understand, like, betrayal, for instance, the amount of shame I would feel every time I felt betrayal, which, by the way, was every day. And I couldn't understand, why am I feeling betrayed over something that I can tell you logically had nothing to do with me? Now I understand that. Now I understand. And I don't have to shame myself for the fact that I had a human feeling. It just was what it was. But I lived in this perpetual cycle of feeling shame, because I didn't understand any of what I was experiencing. And I didn't know how to actually feel anything. I was intellectualizing, analyzing,
Yeah.
processing everything around me. I was a prisoner in my brain. I was miserable. I woke up pissed. I went to sleep pissed. I liked nobody, really. I mean, I hated myself. And I wouldn't have said that. I remember lecturing people a couple of years ago, you gotta love yourself. I like myself so much. And there were parts of myself that I was, becoming more accepting of, but I didn't like myself. I really did not. I really did not. And I think understanding the why behind the thinking and the behaviors, it was really kind of what brought me home.
Wow. One thing that you said that resonated was you have what I'll call maybe a twisted sense of humor as well.
Mm-hmm.
I also have probably some trauma humor, but I find myself to be pretty funny and was thinking it's probably inappropriate, the kind of humor that we both use. But there's never really a convenient time to do that because
Right,
there's always
right.
something. And especially if when you have kids, you're like, oh, damn, you can put it on the calendar. You've got this other stuff going on. But I do think that a lot of folks cope with trauma and shame and things with humor. And maybe that's why we're both so funny. I don't know, but
I
whatever it is,
They
I'm
say the
glad it
best
is.
comedians have gone through the most stuff, so I'm gonna guess that's what created my humor. That and an older brother who was hilarious.
I'm glad that you didn't, but I also understand there's a lot of stuff I also wanted to end things, and I'm glad now I didn't. I always said I was surprised to make it past 24, and now I'm 41,
Really?
almost 42, and I'm very grateful to have had the last like 16 or so years because I didn't think I would. Well, I think a lot of folks go through something dark, and I think it helps to talk about it, and that it does get better, but it does require some effort. And I do love that you're like, if I'm going to be here, let's do it better and differently.
I mean, because ultimately I didn't want to live in my brain, but I didn't feel hope anymore because I had tried so many things. And now, if I'm being 100% honest, none of the things that I tried involved therapy or medicine or any of that because my particular brand of anxiety creates some real catastrophic thinking. And because I worked in hospice, I would picture medicine killing my organs, but it would be a very specific little person, like almost like a gummy bear with a knife stabbing me in the liver, and I couldn't let it go. And not because I ever saw anyone die of taking antidepressants, but I was convinced that long term use of medication would kill me. And I don't know why. It just was because it was easier to get caught up in a thought spiral about how I could die if I take the medication than it was to like experience the feeling. Because I didn't know how to experience the feeling. So I would just go up in my brain, fight with someone, create a conflict, whatever. That's how I knew. I didn't know anything different than that.
I think that's fair too. When you do have some type of mental illness, it's you don't think clearly. And you said I
Mm-hmm.
tried a lot of things, but except for the things that would actually have helped. But that's part of it, and that's where on the outside that seems really obvious, Melissa, but it's not. When you're in the thick of it,
Mm-hmm.
it is really hard to look at things objectively and logically and to say, this is what I should do. This makes the most sense. Or me taking this route is going to fix everything. No, it is not. It is not going to fix
Right.
everything. It makes everything so much harder for everybody else around you. But in that moment, you can't see it that way. It's really easy to say that took the easy way out or that was really selfish or that you weren't thinking of other people. No, they were. They thought that they were a burden and that them not being here will be easier for other people than
That
to
it would
have
be
to worry
better.
about them. And they don't think that these people will actually be devastated when you're not around. That's something that has always upset me that when people hear about somebody who has died from suicide, sometimes the assumption they make or the statement they make. And it's insensitive, first of all, but also if you have not been there, you don't understand how your thought process is so skewed. And
Oh
that
my
what
gosh.
seems really obvious when you're healthy is the furthest thing that you can think of when you're not healthy.
Yeah, I'm really sad for the person that I was because she believed wholeheartedly her kids were better off without her. Like, truly, that was the driving force. Every time I would get so upset at one of them and be reactive, maybe I'd yell, maybe I'd just not handle a situation. It just piled it on, piled it on, piled it on,
Yeah.
piled it on to where it was like, okay, well, I'm never getting better and they deserve better. And I have dead parents. So I know that experience. Neither of them died from suicide, but one did die from an overdose. So I was like, I lived. They'll be better in the long run if they don't have me blowing up every minute of their day being spent with me being upset. Now, there was something deep in my mind and in my subconscious that would say, that's not true. And that's the reason, too, that I didn't do it. I mean, but the overwhelming thoughts nonstop were, you are a terrible mom and they are so much better without you. And it started quiet and it got very loud. I leaned into it because it felt safer to be like, yeah, that's probably true, than to continue to try so hard to get better when it was just making me feel worse because I'm trying, failing. I mean, I've grown so much now that it's like, obviously I can look back and be like, well, failure's a part of trying. And also you were being too hard on yourself and you just didn't like not being perfect. You know what I mean? And I do feel really sorry for that version of me because I was, for everything I was experiencing, I was doing fine. I was making it so much harder on myself by trying to uphold some standard that was never going to be met. I was never going to be perfect. I'm still gonna cuss at my kids sometimes. And I'm okay with that. Do I try to be better every day? Yeah. But sometimes I still cuss at them. And that's just what it is. I don't have to hate myself for my imperfections. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that kids grow up in environments and that's what they know and they still love you. Generally,
Yeah.
your kids are still going to love you because that's mom, that's dad, that's a parent. But I think when you identify that I'm not giving my best, they deserve a lot better. Instead of saying I should just take myself out of the equation, how do I bring my best or better self to this? Because maybe I can't bring perfect, but how do I bring the best self that I can to the situation? And so once you decided, okay, I'm going to stick it out and I'm going to be better, what did you do? How did you start making the daily little changes to move in the direction that you wanted to move?
Gosh, I honestly think leaving my job and not being in such a toxic environment was probably really key for me because that was really the center of all the issues at that time, was the toxic workplace and field that I was in, because I had switched from hospice to education for 7 years. And, it's a failing system. And from top down, it's not real good. It's not going well. And I found that education kind of calls to the codependent. And I'm not saying that with hatred. I was one of them. Part of the problem was hospice taught me pretty good work boundaries. So I brought those to education, and education thrives off people with no boundaries because those are the only people who win teacher of the year or educator of the year or whatever, is the people willing to stay very late, get there very early, work through their lunch, work through their planning, whatever. I was not compliant at all. I was like, oh no, I took a pay cut to come to this job, so you're not getting any extra out of me. I didn't make me very popular. And I was very sure in myself as a professional, and I didn't back down on opinions about kids because I knew fundamentally I'm right. And, when you come into education, you're going to be surrounded by a bunch of toxic people. And I'm not saying everyone, but people don't get to the positions that they are in education without some toxicity. That's just it, period. And I think what it boiled down to is that I had no idea how to feel self-worth or value outside of external validation. You don't get external validation in education unless you are the people I'm speaking of. And it wasn't worth that to me, but I was just getting beat down because the last 4 years I was a school counselor. People didn't understand my role, and I didn't bow down when they had a suggestion and I was like, yeah, I don't think that's best for kids, then I was doing nothing. So I took that very personally because I was putting every single thing I had into being the best at that job because I didn't know how to work other than to be the best at everything. I had been fueled by spite my entire life, proving people wrong about me. So that's kind of the attitude I had. Like, I'll show you, I do nothing. I do everything I want to do and perfectly. So really removing myself from that situation was first and foremost. Getting that book was second. and I understood that I had to start being more present. That didn't come till later, but honestly, in hindsight, I can say the journey to getting there was part of the process because I had to learn how to get out of my head. So that was probably number one, learning how to control the thoughts and walk away from them. When I finally learned how to experience a feeling, and it was life altering, earth shattering, the first time I felt myself drop down into my body and out of my brain. And I was like, oh, this is what they're talking about. This is how you can feel it and release it. Because people love to say that. The gurus, feel it and then release it. I say it too, but I will put the caveat in there like, but it's hard to do. So like, I'm not saying release it forever. It gonna come back. It gonna come back and you're gonna have to do the exact same practice. But I literally didn't even know how to notice when I was overthinking. I remember telling myself, because you know the way subconscious programming works, I was like, okay, I'm gonna say this over and over and then the next time I'll remember. And I was like, check in with your body. Your first sign you're overthinking. My neck, shoulders, and back would be so tense and in so much pain. I was driving down the road. I'm like, ooh, I'm hurting so bad. What's going on? Oh, I must be overthinking. So I was like, ooh, I sure was. I was in a fight with someone in my head. And I was like, okay, I had to do this grounding thing. And I'll tell you, typical traditional grounding of 5 this, 4 this. It didn't work for my ADHD ass because I could still disassociate back off into the trigger. So I would have to just name anything around me very quickly, like red car, blue car. Well, that license plate says this. Now I'm out of my head. And now I'm, from a 10 to like a 5 or a 6. And I can deal with feelings out of 5 or a 6. Out of 10, I'm running from the bear. So whenever I got to an understanding of, I just need to figure out what was triggered just now and move through that. That's really where everything shifted for me because it was my brain driving me insane all those years. So when I learned how to control it and be very like in this moment instead of the last one or the next one, everything shifted for me.
That's actually really powerful. You were saying to get out of your head and be in the present moment. Getting into spirituality, meditating. I talked with a woman on a different episode about meditation and how people who aren't good at it, you don't have to completely block everything out and be silent. And it's just about being present in the moment. And so as you're saying, red car, blue car, I see this, I see that. I feel my shirt on my skin. I feel that I'm sitting on this chair. I feel my shoes on my feet. And it's just getting to a place where you're here and you're not in a thought, you're not yesterday, you're not in a conversation, you're not, 4 weeks ahead of this thing that you're worried about. You're present. And then when you're able to be grounded, because you were saying when you talk about certain words like grounding and feel it, release it, like that sounds wonderful, but like what do you mean? And so, but grounding is just being present, being clear in the moment and recognizing what's around you, what's in you, and like how your body's responding and being able to recognize those things. Getting out of your head and then talking about getting in your body and actually like feeling what the emotion is doing in your body. Just if it's shoulders, if it's teeth, if it's just stiff, if you're bouncing your leg, what is that emotion? Where is it showing up? And those are some things to help folks who are not as familiar with that to get familiar with how to do those practices. And then you mentioned that you would come across like your spiritual awakening as you were going through all of this whealing and whatnot as well. Do you know what spurred the awakening? Is what happened one day that you were like, ta-da?
Yeah, and it's kind of weird. I feel like astrology played a role for sure because I follow this lady on TikTok. Her name is, I think it's Alexi Otto, but it's Alexi Gigi on TikTok. And I purchase from her every month a new moon workbook and a full moon workbook. So I had these shadow work prompts that are based on my chart, like where the moon is in my chart and the lessons I'm supposed to be learning through that. Well, I was on, I think it was episode 4 of my podcast. I was driving in my car and I had been future self journaling for a while. But everything I wanted to be in this journal was like zen and just chill, perpetually unbothered. I just viewed the highest version of me as a very calm person. Now, in hindsight, I know it's because of all the shame that I felt over my reactivity. But that was the first time that I was like, wait, I did an inventory of who I am now and the discrepancy between who I am now and where I'm trying to get. And I was like, I don't want to extinguish my fire because I just found that. I could always advocate for others very well, but I'd never been able to advocate for myself. And working around narcissists really beat me down. I got to a place where I was like, well, I know how to deal with a bully. You just stand up for yourself and they don't know how to deal with it, But I had just found the ability to do that. It was like, okay, I don't want to extinguish this part of my personality. I love how fiery I am. And like I named the episode Embracing My Fire. But I was like, okay, so why am I trying so hard to become this thing that's very opposite of who I am and who I see myself becoming even more of. And then I started to go through each thing on that list where I had felt there was this huge discrepancy. And I will never forget, I'm kind of clairaudient. And so I heard very loudly within my head, like, I already am. I'm already her. I'm hating myself and trying to hate myself to a better place. That's not it, sis. Like, that's not it. And there was just a light bulb moment. And then, because I opened this box, those moments were happening 3 or 4 times a day for probably a month. Imagine how mind blown you are. Like, if you have one aha moment, to have more than one in a day, it got kind of scary. Like, I have joked about it on my podcast, but I legitimately did go to my almost 17. I was like, do you think I'm schizophrenic? Because I don't know what's going on. My worldview is changing so radically, so fast. And he was like, Mom, I think this is just a new belief system for you. And you've had a lot of changes in a really short amount of time. I don't think you're schizophrenic. Because my older brother is schizophrenic. And I have a real fear of that. And I think it's always been like lurking around the corner. Like, oh, is this the year that I have a psychotic breakdown? So I was actually really scared. But it didn't stop. Like, I didn't have as many after about that first month. But I mean, I felt like I got access to parts of my brain that I had never had access to. Like, it was crazy. But I think that, you know, when you do the shadow work and you go and you look at the dark parts of yourself that you've hidden away forever, it kind of opens this whole realm of possibility. And that was it. It just went from there because I needed that. And I wrapped myself up in that because I've grown more in that area. Even now, it's something that still comes up and I refer back to that. I'm like, oh, that's what I meant then. And it means something different every time it comes up, you know?
That's amazing. You mentioned shadow work, and I think it's one of those terms again that people are not familiar with if they're not in the spiritual community, but it's your inner work, the stuff that you shut down that you pretend does not exist, and childhood stuff or just any kind of trauma.
It's the things you keep in the dark. You're not shining light on them.
Yep, you need to go in and deal with the stuff that you keep hidden from everybody else. And
Mm-hmm.
it's hard. It is hard to face things that you don't want to admit or acknowledge because, you know, we have these preconceived ideas of like what we should be and how we should be and what is expected, but there is stuff that you have to face to be able to get through it. You can't get through it unless you go in and focus on it. And that's hard for people
Right.
to want to do that work. And many of them don't. And so you stuff it down, pretend like it doesn't exist, and you move forward. But it will keep
Yeah.
popping up until you address it because it's meant to be addressed. And that's one of the things I learned is that you can't ignore and avoid things forever. They will continue to pop up in a lesson or through a person or through something
Yeah.
until you deal with it, until you face it, because that's what you're supposed to do here.
Well, and that I think was part of why, like, I was driving myself so crazy was that, well, I had no tolerance for anything. You know, like, my threshold for some bullshit was pretty low. And I remember just hitting all these roadblocks over and over and over of different things. And I finally sat there and I said, all right, I get it. I get it. I get it. I get it. You're saying if I don't learn how to manage these petty little life things that I'm experiencing, I'm not going to move beyond this place. I will respond better to the dumb shit. And so I literally had to just, like, you know, that's what life is. Like, leveling up is all about one decision and then the opportunity to confirm those decisions over and over. So I
Yes.
made a decision. I'm not going to sweat the small stuff. You know, like, one of the things that I got real bad at there at the end of my little mental health crisis was road rage, okay? Like, I scared myself and my daughter very bad one day, and I was like, we maybe don't need to behave that way in the car. So I made a decision. I don't get in a hurry in the car. I will be late before I ever allow myself to behave that way again over nothing. And I put myself in dangerous positions doing that. And people carry guns. They will shoot your ass, you know? Over what? Because I wasn't even going to be late. It was just, you know, that masculine energy. You're just trying to get somewhere for no reason. I made the decision. I don't get in a hurry. Because being in a hurry at all for me throws me right back into survival mode. Like, I know that about myself. With my extensive history of childhood trauma, I can't be in a hurry. And so I made that decision. I made a decision to not sweat the small shit. And so then opportunities arose a lot. They still do. You know, honest to God, I couldn't even tell you what kind of small shit I have to deal with now because I don't pay attention to it the way I believed wholeheartedly everything was happening to me. I was, you know,
Yes.
pretty victim mentality. Wouldn't have ever said that though. I hated the victim, right? But I mean, clearly that's what I was. I do just some old religious programming. I felt unsupported by the universe. I must have put bad into the world. I'm receiving bad back. Like, you can choose what the middle part looks like. That's what I always tell people. If you picture two ledges from getting from here to here, you're not going to control what this part looks like that much. Typically, the end result doesn't vary a whole lot. That middle part, you get to decide how good or bad that is. And when I started to realize, like, trying to control everything and be real bitchy through the whole process really isn't changing that outcome a lot.
Right.
So I just get into the energy of how I want to feel before I ever get there, and then boom. But it's like self love. You have to decide, I'm going to love myself. And then opportunities are going to arise where you have to confirm that decision over and over.
That has been a lesson. I'm fairly newish to spirituality, and like you, went through a huge shift. My priorities completely changed with
Yeah.
me getting more aligned with myself. And my job used to be like my top priority, even over family and a marriage,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a problem. And then suddenly it wasn't, and now then I quit my job. And so that was like, who are you? Some of my shadow work was I don't like to be seen. And we had
Mm-hmm.
talked on your podcast about some stuff that had happened as a child that it's easier and safer for me to not be out in the public and to be obvious and draw attention to myself. And so I never did. I always wore baggy clothes, didn't really speak up in meetings and situations, and just played small. And now part of why I'm here is to help other people who are going through things I've already gone through. And so I have
Mm-hmm.
to be seen. And I was like, oh, it sounds terrible.
So
I don't want people to see me, but I made a business that I never planned to make. And now I'm like I have two podcasts and I'm trying to be guests on other people's podcasts to meet other people. And like you said, you make the decision, like I'm going to be seen, I'm going to stop playing small, but then life will give you opportunities to see, did you really mean it? Because if
did
you
you
then go
mean
back
it?
to playing
Yep.
small, then okay, you actually haven't learned your lesson. You're still going into those old patterns. So you have to keep choosing to do that thing. And then it's you level up and then you get
You
to this new
do?
thing and then everything's a little bit better. But then you've got a new thing that you've got to decide, and it's like,
Uh-huh.
did you mean it? And you got to keep choosing that thing, and and so it gives you these lessons. And what you said is life is happening to me, and I don't want to sound toxic positivity because that's not what this is. But
Right.
like life is
If
happening
you're not there,
for
this is
you.
going to trigger you, and we get that, and we honor where you are in your journey.
Yes, but when people say life is happening for you, it's not happening to you as a victim. It's happening for you to see how do you respond to it? What are you going to do with this? And if
Yeah.
something is happening that you feel is a negative, like what am I supposed to learn from this? What am I supposed to do with that? How should I respond? Is this an opportunity for me to maybe not show road rage? Is this an opportunity for me to speak up to somebody or for something
Right.
instead of
Or
just
for myself. Yeah.
right? And so that's what that is. It's giving you opportunities to prove
To
what you want
say
to do.
that yeah, to prove that, like, I am what I say I am. I do
Yes.
what I say I'm going to do. I remember when all of this triggered me. I remember very
Yes.
clearly because I had the blue collar spiritualist, who's my little buddy, on here, and he was like, "Yeah, but like, why did you attract that experience?" And I was like, "That's a different level of consciousness, and we are not going to trigger anyone." But really, I was triggered. Lately, the astrology's been like crazy, right? And I've gone through some shit, and I was just like, okay, I don't want to waste the energy of getting all upset about that. So it's like I'm perpetually on beta blockers. Like I'll start to feel it and then I'm that is real. That's going to take a lot of energy and I don't have it. Like I'm kind of tired. I'm going to go try to figure out, or if I do get in that really just in the red kind of space, I'm like, I bet there's something I can learn from this. You know what? Like I said to my husband the other day, listen, I have PMS. I'm really tired. I have not been intentional about joy in a few weeks since I've been very busy. I was like, so I'm being bitchy and I'm sorry. I'm going to go. I need space. Just please stop trying to be sweet to me right now. Like I can't be nice. I want to go and just take a nap. I really need a nap. But that fight would have been a whole day before. Like I would have really leaned into how righteous I felt about whatever it was that he did to fail me or whatever. And now I'm like, I feel right. But this wouldn't keep coming up if I didn't need to learn something here. I would much rather be like, what should I learn than to lean into the feeling?
Yeah. And honestly, it's just easier sometimes. It's not trying to be self-righteous and it's definitely not overly positive, but sometimes like what am I supposed to get from this?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes maybe it's just this person's an asshole. And that's
Yeah.
okay. Maybe you don't need to respond to it. Not everything
Yeah.
is good. And it's not saying that it should happen or like, look at you being on your life path of being a total jerk to everybody around you. Like maybe that's what
Yeah,
they're
but you're
supposed to
not
do, but like
personalizing everything.
right. Like you don't have to respond to it. So some things happen. to you, for you, that might not be positive, but the lesson is how do I respond to it? That's where you take it from there. And that's something that was a little bit harder for me to realize. And sometimes I'm totally unbothered, and I was pretty unbothered by things to begin with. I've always been pretty mellow. But now I'm like, okay, that's not about me. Like that's not personal to me. That's
Mm-hmm.
them having their own little experience, and I'm okay with that. And sometimes I'll question, hey, right now you seem a little bit short or
Yeah.
snippy or whatever. Like, is that because of me or is that? And they're like, you're right. Like, I'm sorry. I'm upset about something else, but I am being really short here. Okay, cool. Just before I need to
Just
respond or
checking.
to,
Yeah.
meet you where you are. I don't need to meet you where you are because we're not even on the same place right now. Like, that's okay.
No, for real. And I think that's been the biggest shift for me too is like, I'm still going to react initially, probably the same way I've always reacted in my heart. It's going to, because again, I lived for 44 years in this manner. So it's going to take a while for all of that programming to go. But my next breath is, okay, wait, let me figure this
Hmm.
out. Because again, my currency really is peace and energy, and I don't want to lose it because of like stuff that I really could just chill out about. So I just try to, okay, I freaked out for a second, now what? And then just move on.
It's a hard lesson to learn, especially if you're learning it at a different time than those around you. If they're not on that same kind of journey or
Yes,
timeline, you're
that's
almost
so
speaking
true.
two different languages, and that
No,
can
you
be a little
absolutely
challenging.
are. Yeah.
And it feels hard to communicate. And there's a little bit of a translation that needs to happen
Yes.
sometimes when you're in your awakening state.
Exactly. Well, even in therapy, I go woo woo because I tell them from the beginning, I might not be for you. And I'm not going to be hurt by that. Please go be with someone
Yeah,
else if it's not for you. But I'm going to bring the woo woo. I'm going to bring the astrology. I'm going to bring whatever. And sometimes I'm like, okay, well, I'm about to get woo woo. So let's open our hearts and our
brace
minds a
yourself.
little bit
Open your
because
third
I'm going to
eye.
have to tell you something. Exactly. But they all love it because they know everything I'm saying is so genuine. And I'm saying it because I've experienced it. Like, I was upset with Pete for saying, why did you attract that experience and victim consciousness and whatever. I'm not now because I get it. We're speaking the same
Hmm.
language. But, like, that's why my bubble's so small because most people are not speaking my language. I'm making better connections with people through the internet than the people in real life because I'm heard here.
Yeah. I hang out with a lot of dogs, so like I'm not judging you. I hang out with animals. I don't,
You
now
do
that I
have a
don't
lot
go
of
into an
dogs.
office anymore, we've got 9 pets in this house, and so I work at home and I hang out with animals all day, and I talk to people on the internet, and then when my wife gets home, I talk to her. There's no
Our
judgment.
lives sound very similar, except I
It's
only
like,
have 3 dogs.
oh, you gotta level up.
Yeah.
Gotta
They're more
level
than
up.
I
You
can
need you
handle
need
sometimes.
need
I'm like,
another
I don't
one.
know how you got so many. I don't know. Oh, if it was up to my daughter, we'd have like 4 more.
Yes, no, it all makes sense, and I like that you bring your real life experience and the spirituality and all of that to what you do as a therapist because I think for people who maybe aren't 100% there yet, like it's a good way to open the door to it because, for
Yeah.
folks who aren't exposed to it, you just don't know about it yet. So to hear about it, oh, that makes sense, or I really resonate with what that means, or I'm going to look into it a little bit more. And I think that's really helpful to bring full picture to everything you're doing.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the times I'll be like, what you're saying is not wrong. Like a traditional therapist would be like, great, you held a boundary, you said how you felt, blah, blah, blah. But you know that I'm trying to bring a higher level of consciousness, so I'm going to offer this. And I have to talk a lot about the mirroring that we do, why the people that you have in your life are in your life, and just some of the spiritual concepts. But I just offer both perspectives. I'm not going to judge you if you stay here. You have every right to. That's
Mhm.
your experience and whatever. But if you want true peace and self love, leveling up offers that because you no longer care to that extent what anyone around you is doing. Most of the time, I can overlook my husband doing shit that used to enrage me because it felt so personal. It felt like he was communicating that he didn't care about me or what I needed. And a lot of times now I'm just like, well, that's annoying, but okay. And just move on. I don't start fights over a lot, except for during PMS. My audience knows about my PMDD, so sometimes I do be going off the chains a little bit, but that's a part of who I am, and I just have to apologize for it later. But I don't feel like it's happening because he hates me or doesn't care about me. I just am like, oh, you're getting on my last nerve. But that's different than feeling so overwhelmed by the fact that nobody in my life loved me. Well, now I can receive love because I know what true love is, and it's only the love you have for you. And then you get to share that with other people. That's it. That's love. It's not dopamine. It's not oxytocin. It's not serotonin. And it's not adrenaline.
Oh, I like that. No, and I think most people are just on their little paths doing their own little thing. Most people are not doing anything to enrage you, to
Right.
annoy you, to anything. They're just doing what they're doing because they like to
Yeah.
do it, because they want to do it, because they have their own little habits and rituals. Like 99% of the time, people aren't thinking about us. And we're not thinking about other people. We're doing what we're doing. I'm going to go make my lunch and I'm going to do this. And if, your spouse is like, well, you didn't clean up your counter, you're doing that to annoy me. No, I just hadn't gotten to it, or I just didn't care about it. And so I didn't do it. It wasn't
Right.
to annoy you. I
It didn't
just,
mean that much to me.
right. And that's really how it is. And I think we all kind of get in our heads, what are they thinking about me? What are they doing? They must be doing. They don't
Mm-hmm.
care. They don't,
No, they really
you're,
don't.
you're not on their
They
radar.
don't.
They're not on the
But
radar.
that used to bother me because that meant something different to me then. Like, I thought I should be on the forefront of your mind because that's what codependency teaches you. You know what I mean? So I thought, like, that is how you show love, is that I was thoughtful. I pre considered how you would feel about this. But that was just my grandma, like in her narcissistic tendencies, teaching me that. You know what I mean? That's
Hmm.
not how relationships work, but I truly believed that you're supposed to be thinking of the other person ahead of yourself, like all the time. You can guess how that worked. Not good. Not good. Listen, there's a certain point at which you just have to understand you're not compatible if there's too many of those things. Because you
Yes.
cannot continually sacrifice your own desires, not just needs, but your desires for the sake of someone else. Because what happens is you're going to expect them to do that too. For lots of reasons, you can't do that, but also you can't expect them to do the same thing. That's really what got me in trouble, was that expectation piece where it was like, I did all of that for you. And when somebody would say to me, but nobody asked you to. Oh, I would be so hurt by that because I'd be like, you didn't have to. That's the point. I just knew. Girl, no,
But
no.
you're hitting on some
Say
stuff
no.
though. I think a lot of people could recognize that in themselves and say like, maybe I should call Melissa and work with her.
Come
Got
on
some
down.
got some relationship stuff to work through. It's so interesting where we all are in this lifetime on our journeys, and how it plays out. Because we're not all at the same point, and some of us don't wake up in this
Right.
this lifetime, and you're not supposed to wake
I
them
know.
up. Hey, I want to bring you with me because this is what I'm learning, and they're like, no, that's not where I'm at. It's not what I
Yes.
believe, and it's so hard because it's not your place to wake them up. But
Yep.
it's also not your place to take their current beliefs and limiting beliefs to hinder your growth. If you are awake, like,
Right.
then keep going. But that was hard for me to learn, because when I first got on, I was like, everybody, like, learn what I'm learning, and they're like,
Yes.
what are you talking about, you crazy lady? Oh,
Yes. Yeah, so I think I worried about judgment, but also I don't worry about judgment at all anymore, but my growth and evolution has impacted my relationships greatly because even my kids, they went through a period of really making fun of me because I offer the other perspective. I don't call it playing devil's advocate because playing devil's advocate has no rhyme or reason, but the world that I'm existing in allows for other perspectives. I have a child on the spectrum. I have to provide the other perspective or he doesn't get it. And I mean, I have to put it in 12 different ways for him to understand it. It's always been who I am, but now it's even more. Well, I'm not saying understand them so that you can continue to receive abuse or punishment or whatever, but so that you understand it's not about you. Like they're
hmm
doing that because they are doing that. Like it's not about you.
yeah.
And my kids would really go in on me. Like I've stopped even like talking to them about astrology or anything because they made it clear we don't give a shit. That's fine. That's them. But I have a couple of friends who have taken this journey with me, and I'm like, you. That's how you know who you knew in a past life. You know what I mean? But most of them think I'm a little crazy. That's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it
It's
really
okay.
does not bother me at all because I'm happy.
I mean, at the end of this life, like, that, it doesn't matter. I was always a people pleaser, trauma response.
Hmm.
But as a people pleaser, I always wanted everybody else's comfort to come first. And then I had to realize I'm the one that has to live with me. I have to live with my decisions. I have to live with my emotions and thoughts and feelings and repercussions. And if your opinions aren't paying my bills or not doing anything in my day
Yeah.
to day, why am I giving you so much rent in my head? It doesn't matter. And so that's
That's so
been
true.
freeing, but it was hard, and it's lonely too, to move from
Yeah.
relationships and connections, and they all kind of fall off as you level up and do your thing, and it feels really lonely and isolating. But then at the same time, it's really peaceful because you will eventually align with the people that you need to align with.
That's
And
right.
those relationships were good and they were meaningful when they were
Hmm.
happening, but now neither one of you have much to give or get from that relationship anymore. So now it's time to separate and move on, and that's
Right.
okay. But it's
Right.
hard sometimes if you're somebody who's a people pleaser to feel like you're letting go of people and things, even if it doesn't serve you or them anymore.
Or even just a person with huge loss wounds, you know, who
Hmm.
like can't handle losing one more thing or one more person. That was the hard part for me. And I didn't trust myself. So like I would go back and forth on decisions all the time. Like, oh, should
Yeah.
I, shouldn't I? So yeah, I think it's really easy to start doubting what you're doing. But then like when I would go to reach out to that person, I'd come up and be like, why though? Like, let's say we do hang out, it's not gonna be a good time. Like, it's just
Yeah,
not.
that's hard because you're like, I'm going to text Melissa, but why? What am I hoping she'll say? What am I hoping we'll do if we get together? Will this be fun? What am I going to get from that? And if the answer is really nothing or nothing positive, like, why do I want to do it? And there's a guilt and obligation almost. And I have experienced that where I'm like, why do I want to do that? And it's hard to let go.
Yeah, yeah. I hear you when you say guilt.
That's something I think people don't talk about as much is the loneliness and isolation part of your spiritual awakening. People either A think you're crazy or B, even if they don't think you're crazy, if you're going at it at different timelines, there's a lot of emotions and stuff that come with it as you are moving from who you were to who you are and are becoming. There's a lot of loss that happens that can be
Truly.
challenging.
Yeah, I mean, in the moment, I mean, in hindsight, listen, when you get there, you don't regret any of it. So just know that.
Right.
Like, keep going because you're always going to be so happy you've made these decisions. But it's not just like you're sitting there one day and you think to yourself, I probably just shouldn't hang out with them anymore. Shit happens, right? There's an event usually that happens in the relationship to where you're like, huh, that was kind of toxic and I don't think I want to do that again, you know? And you just notice how you feel around people that you used to feel really good around. But now
Yeah.
you don't because for me, it kind of took learning like all those relationships that I had were built off talking shit or complaining. And I don't want to do either of those, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, Melissa, I want to be respectful of your time, so we will get ready to wrap up. But two questions. So, one, any final thoughts or anything that you want to share with anybody that's listening today?
You know, however isolating, however lonely, however scary any of the things that we're saying may seem, we're saying all this with the benefit of hindsight. And so we're
Yes.
saying it's worth it. Keep going. So hear that when we say it's worth it. Keep going. There is always hope. There is a direction and you can find it. You just have to align yourself with the right people. So if listening to us today did something for you, listen to more of our stuff. Listen to more people like us. I mean, that's the great thing about podcasts is it'll say more like this. If you're like me and you were afraid of therapy and you were afraid of medication, there's so many other resources out there. Like you can find that first step. That's the only step you need to take is the first one. And it's possible. It's more than possible. Like go get your happiness. This is the only fucking life you get, man.
That's really true. You only get one, so enjoy it. And also, if you're like me, who was not afraid of medicine, you can try that too. Medicine and therapy also help. So
Absolutely.
try whatever works for
Absolutely.
you. There's no judgment
Do
on,
whatever you're feeling like you should do. I mean, like
yes.
we have an intuition, learn to listen to it. You know, go get just try it. Like we used to say in hospice, if you're ever thinking, should I call the nurse? You need to call the nurse. Just go ahead and do it because we don't
Yeah.
want you sitting here worrying and wondering. So if you're thinking, maybe I do need medicine, go get it and try it. Talk to your doctor about what your fears are around this medicine. They can get you on one that's easy to wean off of if you don't like it. You can
Hmm.
start with baby medicines. I mean, there's so many opportunities and options out there for help. Just go see what works for you. There are way too many avenues to go down to set and feel hopeless and helpless because I get what those feel like, but they are liars. Your brain is a liar. It's not
Yes.
trained to teach you to feel appropriately. It's trained to keep you alive and it will feed you catastrophic information to keep you safe. It is all a lie, every ounce of it. So go find your truth.
You don't have to white knuckle it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank
Exactly
you.
right.
Then the last thing is if somebody does want to either A, look you up to check your podcast, if they want to work with you, if they just want to talk to you, how do they find you?
Well, I'm all over. I'm on LinkedIn and try to respond to messages there. I'm going to get better about that. But you can find me there. You can find me on Instagram at melissa.hepner. But probably the easiest and most comprehensive is my website, empoweredwithmelissahepner.org.
Then I will also add all of those to the show notes so that people can find those when they are listening and watching. But thank you, Melissa, so much for coming and sharing your story and just your insights. It was lovely to talk with you as always, and I appreciate your time.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right, and thanks for listening. We'll catch you on the next episode. This episode of Stumbling Forward was brought to you by Ori Ara's Self Care Collective. Real women, real lives, and real self care. It's empowering you to take care of yourself one day at a time. If you are interested in joining the Self Care Collective, there are discount codes on the screen. Stumbling Forward member will get you 20% off your first month's membership, or the Stumbling Forward founder will get you 20% off a lifetime membership.